Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so excited to introduce you to Patrick O'Hearn. And I have actually had the honor of um, knowing about Patrick for some time through Praise Writers. You may have heard me talk about the community of Catholic writers that was founded by Claire and Mike, and it's just been such a gift. And so Patrick had actually answered a couple of my questions in the Friday chat, and it just caught my eye, and I thought, well, he's so kind and generous. Who is this? And I realized this was the same Patrick O'Hearn who I had bought my children the book about Our Lady of Champion. And it was just an exciting connection to realize that this was the same author that was answering questions for me. So, Patrick, thank you for your generosity of your and your encouragement to other authors. It's really a gift. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's my honor to be here.
It's exciting. I was just telling Patrick before we got started that last week I decided I really wanted to jump in and read one of his many books. And so I chose on Audible, I chose The Parents of the Saints. And it has been just an overwhelming blessing in my life. And I had no idea there was so much information about the parents of the saints out there. And I love listening to all that he discovered about the saints and about parents of saints. And I feel like it's just such an encouragement that now I'm a little better armed to raise my kiddos in a very saintly way with how they did it. So thank you for that, Patrick.
Oh, no, my pleasure. No, I think that book, it took me 3 years to write.
Wow.
And people say, they write for many reasons. And I really think when you write, it's like an examination of conscience because I'm also writing for myself. I'm not just writing because, as you know, I always joke with people, like, if you want to become rich and famous, don't write Catholic books because it doesn't happen. And you shouldn't have that tension, obviously, but every bit helps. But I think just learning about the saints, it's made me a better parent. And I have to stand before God someday and say, like, that I implement these practices that because if I'm not living this life, following these parents, and I think that I call them the hidden heroes, and they really are. And I wish there was more information there. Even going back to the older saints, it's tough to get, just good research. And so, like, a lot of it was, I do mostly talk about Saint Therese's parents. I'd say they're featured the most in my book because there's the most resources on them. But I just love Lewis and Zelly Martin, and thank you for listening to that audiobook. And
It's been such a blessing. I'm learning so much, and I love it's what this podcast is about when you trip over the saints. And I didn't realize how much Zelly and I feel she's very relatable, and I have a lot in common with her that I didn't even know that I had in common with her. And it's such a gift. The saints are just such a gift to us that the Lord, you know, shows us that, not only did he come down and he became human and walked this earth, but that there are saints that are examples to us and part of our family and can help guide us. And it's such a gift.
I was talking to my one friend that has a great devotion to Padre Pio, and I've had this issue with my life because I've I didn't grow up with a lot of friends. I have probably a few close friends, but not a whole lot. It's not like I didn't choose that way. But I always say, I have more friends in heaven than on earth. And I really believe, I've said this before, like the saints choose us. And sometimes I have this guilty sense where, like, for instance, like, I don't have this like great love for John Paul II or Padre Pio. And I asked my priest about this one time, and he's like, you know what? It's like saints come and go in your life, and they're not like upset if you don't call upon them. And I will say the priest that married my wife and I, his name is Father Lester Knoll, and he was a Capuchin. And one time, Padre Pio rebuked him in prayer and said, "Why don't you seek my intercession?" And I do think that, it's they come and go, and not to, I guess, to really nurture the ones that you have a great devotion to, and don't feel bad about maybe your friend has this great devotion of Padre Pio, but you don't, and like you shouldn't feel guilty about that or feel like, oh, well, maybe I should have that devotion. No, I really think the saints choose us, and maybe there's a particular time season in your life where you're going to be introduced to one or the other. But I would say, just like friendships, you have to cultivate them, and I really think focusing on those few saints that you really love, calling upon them daily, not just like on their feast day, but really asking them. And so I think that's been something that's really opened my eyes is again to concentrate on the ones that I do love and not worry so much about the ones that I don't have a devotion to.
It's incredible how, and what I love is hearing all the different ones that people have a devotion to that I've never even heard of before. As a college convert, I didn't grow up with saints. And so it is so exciting to me that no matter who you are, no matter what your location is, no matter what journey, what path you've been on, there is a saint that wants to be your friend and that wants to walk alongside you and pray for you. And how cool is that?
It is, because sometimes we feel in our world like we feel like alone often, or like, oh, like no one can understand me. And, like I think of saints, like I actually went through that same exact cross as you, and I overcame it, and I can help you, with that particular struggle you're going through, and I think for me, like I spent a few years in religious life, and when I discerned out, I had difficulty relating to so many of the saints that I grew up in love because they all took a vow of celibacy, like Saint Therese, Saint Francis. And then it's at that moment that I believe that Saint Therese introduced me to her mom and dad and said, Patrick, like, here's my parents. They had the same struggle as you. In a sense, like she was handing me over. You know how Jesus like shows us the Father and Mary shows us Jesus. I really believe, sometimes the saints, in my experience, I really believe like, well, in the book, The Parents of the Saints, I really believe that the saints have shown me their parents. And same with like John Paul II, I have a great love for his parents, and I think they'll be canonized someday. But I really think that's kind of the goal of friendship too, is not to point to Christ. And so I think these saints do that.
I agree. I agree. It's beautiful. Well, okay, speaking of saints, I cannot wait. It's so funny because a lot of times when I have a guest on, there's no doubt in my mind which saint they're going to talk about. I'm like, okay, I know them well enough to know from, either social media or the interactions I've had with them. I can guess which saint they're going to talk about. But I have no idea which saint you're going to talk about. So I'm really excited. I can't
Yeah,
wait to hear. So
yeah.
so tell us all about it.
Yeah, no, I would say, well, my favorite saint is Saint Patrick, and but the thing is, I love his Saint Patrick's breastplate, and I need to read more about his life. Honestly, I'm named after him, but it's tough because again, he was born so long ago. But I'm going to pretty soon. I'm going to Ireland on a pilgrimage, and I've never
Oh,
been there
wow.
before, and I really just want to draw closer to him, and I actually invoke him a lot because I feel like our name is associated with our mission in life. And I really believe like, like Patrick, like he preached to the pagans. And I think that's why maybe God called me to write, because honestly, it's a gift because I hate writing. Hated writing growing up. I hated speaking. And I feel like God gave me that gift. I just struggle with it so much. I couldn't even write a paper in high school. And, and so I feel like God gave me that gift to be like, to evangelize in our time. But to go back, so I will say St. Patrick's my favorite. So there's so many of them, but it's tough to. I mean, I will say Lewis and Zelly are my two. After that, I mean, I've been blessed with a first class relic of them, and so they're like my
Wow.
favorite. I would say they're the most relatable saints. Everything they went through, so I would say I have the greatest devotion to them. And then there's others like Blessed Solanus Casey's up there. I like Maria Goretti. Like I've started to like Mary Magdalene now. I just like, I don't know, they just come and go. But I really think Lewis and Zelly, and I would say Blessed Solanus Casey are probably those are like, and St. Patrick would be my top.
Those are your team.
Yeah.
I
How
love
about
that.
how about you, Kate? Well, who's like your top saint that you?
Oh gosh. Saint Dymphna, just
Yeah.
over and over, um, she just shows up over and over, and it doesn't matter how long it's been since we've talked um, or what's going on. It's She just shows up at the most perfect times. Um, Zelly Martin is a new friend. I've had a quote from her in my home for a very long time, about we will see our little ones again up in heaven. And but I really, that was pretty much as much as I knew about her. But then honestly, through listening to your book, I
Hmm.
feel like just a renewed or a brand new closeness to her, where I really feel like she's coming along beside me. Very relatable right now in my life. And then yeah, there's others that my mother's favorite saint is Saint Therese, and I've noticed her more and more. And what I love about that is I think when I see when I'm reminded of her,
Hmm.
it reminds me of my mom, and to touch base with her, to call her, to just see how her day is going.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I don't know if Saint Therese is necessarily picking me or if she's tugging on my sleeve to say, "Hey, your mama could use some checking in right now. Go ahead and call her." You know?
Yeah. Uh,
But yeah, I always think of, it's almost like, baseball jerseys. It's like we've got this little saint team that goes around cheering for us and trying to get our attention. And um, yeah, Saint Anne is also, my middle name is Anne, and so she's also someone that I really would like to get to know better.
mhm.
So I'm working on that, but definitely Saint Dymphna, hands down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I know she's from Ireland. I think her body is actually in Belgium, but
Hmm.
I would love to have to figure out what town she's from. I know on our trip, but I would love to stop and pray, and see where, she was raised.
Yes. Yes. We actually did a pilgrimage a year ago to Geel, to ask for healing for one of our children, and um, in Belgium, and it was phenomenal. The people were so kind, and
Yeah.
the experience of that trip was just um, amazing. Was there a miraculous healing? No, there wasn't. But the graces that have come from that
Yeah.
trip have been tenfold. And so I know that she's interceding for us, and I know that the peace and the calm in all the storm is a gift. And that pilgrimage, oh, it'll stay with me forever. It was amazing. And yes, I hope to go to Ireland someday. I'm not sure exactly where to go to find her either, but
Mhm.
I hope so. Did you know there is a shrine in Ohio, that I hope to go visit someday as
Yeah,
well?
there is. It's near my parents' house.
Wow.
I think it's in Massillon, and I think
It
they have
is,
one of the
yeah.
largest relics of her there. I need to go. I would like to go visit that too because it is, in our families, even myself, like just growing up with a certain level of anxiety, it's just, and you sometimes you wonder where does that come from? Obviously, the devil plays on those issues, and or we have a family line of maybe there's depression in your family line and things just they come up and and it's so sad because you can't, it's like sometimes God, he allows us to, he doesn't heal us completely of those afflictions, and they're afflictions really, they're crosses. And I do think like going to these certain saints and just asking even just for some comfort in that, like help me to like give me that grace to embrace it, and maybe when it's God's will to heal me of it. But it
Mhm.
definitely, I do think like going to those saints shrines, and one of my friends, I think she's writing a book for OSV, but she said on saints feast days, like there's so many special graces that happen, and often it's like, we say a prayer, oh, like today Saint this is being aired on the feast of Saint Augustine, pray for us, but really like if that's it, like I need, and shame on me, I need to go deeper than that. Like Saint Augustine, like grant me the great, give me like your virtue, give me your, like especially he's the doctor of grace. Give me the grace that like from the rest of my life, like to help me overcome any temptation, whether, I mean, he dealt with sexual temptations. I mean, so just anything that comes my way. And I think that that's so important.
Yeah, it's amazing that all the layers that you find out about exactly like feast days and how beautiful it is, just like when you remember a friend on their birthday
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
special your
Yeah.
friendship becomes when you remember that friend on their birthday. It's kind of the same thing. It's you are cultivating that friendship. You are taking time to say, "Hey, you are important to me and I would love your intercession." It's that simple. We make it complicated, but it's not.
Definitely. And I think and when we forget about them, I mean, they make their presence known, whether it's in a book or, just like you stumble across like this podcast, you're like, wow, I never thought about that. And they really are like just they kind of help us. They're like Saint Simon the Cyrene. They help us carry our cross to heaven. That's what I really believe. Like, Saint Sally, like I'm having a rough day. Or I actually occurred to me today, my son is Jude and Saint Jude, and it's like even your children's names, and you think about your children's saint names they're named after, and their guardian angels, like they're part of your family now.
Yeah.
And our son is a choleric personality, and my wife and I are very melancholic, and it's difficult having a choleric child. I don't know if you have one. I mean, they're just like, I mean, they're beautiful. They have this strong will, and they're leaders, but it's like, I mean, they are stubborn, and they obedient and disobedient. And so I was thinking today, out of nowhere, I really believe like St. Jude's like, Patrick, call upon me. You named me after your son. There's a reason you gave him that name. I am the patron of impossible causes. Do you think that I can't handle your son? And so that
Yeah.
that thought, and that was from God, because because we've been struggling with him. He's only 8, but I'm like, if I don't get this right now, when he gets to high school, I mean, it's
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, I know. I feel like listening to Zelly from her autobiography talk about her oldest daughter, Laity.
Yeah,
And I had no idea that Saint Teresa's sister, you know, really, really struggled and was, kicked out of school 3 times and then tried to become, you know, a nun 4 times, and it took her 4 times to get, and it just what a gift that
yeah,
to know that other parents of saints did not have an easy
yeah,
easy time parenting, and it's such a gift. It's a gift to us to know that when our family does not look like the Christmas
right,
card Gap commercial of perfection, that we are absolutely not alone. In fact, we're in very good
yeah.
company.
That's what I was like, I read somewhere too, is like Mother Angelica said, I wish many years in purgatory to those who sugarcoat the lives of the saints. So when I wrote this book, I had that in the back of my mind, because so like in the Parents and Saints, I mean, I mentioned areas where they failed at, and it's just to show like, wow, they were human. And that's why I think Lewis and Zelly Martin, I really believe that they're the most relatable, most normal saints that I have found in all my research, because they lost 4 children. They had a daughter that was emotionally abused. Zelly got cancer. Zelly complained about preaching. The preaching, and they are surrounded by wealthy friends, and they were upper middle class, but they had their challenges. They weren't, and Zelly had to work to provide for their family. And I mean, there's just a lot of things that they had going on in their life. And if you look at it from the outside, you're like, wow, this is like the perfect family. They raised a saint. It's like, no, Zell even said like if she had to do it all over again, like she would not do lace making. She was so sick of working so hard. And I mean, her business was more profitable than her husband's, but she's like, I mean, she dreaded it. She's like, I want to be done. And but I think just that honesty, and I
Yes.
think and sometimes we can look at other families in our parish, and they have my wife and I are blessed with 2 children on earth and 2 in heaven, but it's like, God willing, we hope to have more, but it's tough, because you can look at other families that have 10, 15 kids, and you're like, wow, like what happened, Lord? And and or you see, and it's like God's like, you don't know their struggles they're having, like the crosses you have. I mean, you don't want their crosses, because
Hmm.
the crosses that I've given you are for your family. And I think that's, again, looking in the saints' lives, I think if we were to dive deeper, like, we would realize, wow, they were very far from perfection, but yet they kept trying.
Right, right. And I think it's such a good reminder to us to also not be afraid with our close friends to be vulnerable and to let them know, first of all, how they could intercede for us, but also to share with them that some of the struggles that, in that way, I think that there is, especially here in the West, there is a, a push to pretend that you are perfect and that you've got
Mhm.
everything together and that you do it all right and all is well. And, when that first person comes forward and says, we're really struggling with this. Maybe it's a kiddo's behavior, maybe it's finances, maybe it's a temptation of some sort. And then, all of a sudden you start to see hands go up. Hey, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. And all of a sudden you realize that you are all carrying different crosses and you can help one another either through accountability or intercession or just companionship.
Mhm.
And it is such a lie from the enemy that we have to feel isolated or
Mhm.
alone in those struggles.
Definitely. I think I was talking to a close friend, and even we were talking about even our wives. Just the stress level. It's so difficult, and especially in the United States with inflation, and it's just like even providing for your family. Like, it's even as a writer, like I work a couple jobs, and that it's sad in a sense. I'm glad to do that, but I also, like, it takes away from the time that I'd have with my family, and just a lot of stress levels. And we were sharing that with each other, and like our wives are kind of dealing with a lot of stress. It's like back in the day, like your parents lived like next door, and you had a lot of support. And there's just a lot of crosses that I think the more you open up to other people, you realize, wow, like we're not alone. We're undergoing the same crosses, and I think that's even more so when we go to the saints. Like, you can look at saint when you're having a rough day, you're like, man, is this like ever going to get better? And then, like, out of nowhere, like a thought comes to you, and I think it's from your guardian angel, or it's like, remember like Saint Zelly, or like, the saint pops in your mind. It's like, no, they had the same issue. It's like, until we get to heaven, like, there's no rest. I mean, there's rest on Sundays, right? When we need it. I think that's another thing too, is like, I think the saints teach us that balance. Like, there's this. I mean, their life was hard, and it's never going to be easy on earth. But they found a way, I think, to maybe towards the end of their life, I don't know, like, just to have this balanced life where it was like, you know what, they're praying a lot, and but maintaining their peace of heart. I think that's where they can teach us, and they had to fight for that. And I think that's
Yes.
something that we need to do in our families, to maintain that peace. So whatever is like coming after that peace, like, that's not from God, and we need to, like, identify and maybe ask the saints, like, how did you maintain that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, speaking of being vulnerable and letting us know what's going on, I want to talk about the book that was just released that you wrote. Um, I've had many, many miscarriages, have many kiddos in heaven, and I'm very incredibly thankful for people that share their journey and words of hope around that. So, will you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that book?
Yeah, first of all, I'm sorry for all your losses. That
Thank
really,
you.
really breaks my heart. And I don't know if this podcast, or do you just show the video, or do you show the just the audio, or do
Just
you?
the audio.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say I had the cover. I was gonna show, but I
Oh, yeah,
think
and I'll put the cover in the notes that
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah, really. Well, on the cover, I was praying before the Blessed Sacrament. I'm not a mystic or anything. I wish I was. I wish not that I don't seek to hear God's voice. I do, but not like audibly, or like in my heart. Like, I want to know His will, but like, I don't go seek visions. But when I was before the Blessed Sacrament, I had this image came to mind, and it was Mary, and she's surrounded by children. And my friend Michael Corsini painted this, and it is available. We have a resource page at the back of our book, and you can buy this image. And so we commissioned him to paint it. And so he painted my two children, Thomas and Angelica. My wife had dreams of them right after they died, and then these are some of the other children in the book that the contributors' children. And so the image is the whole book is kind of just, I don't know how, it's really God's hand. So I got connected with Cassie through a friend, and I learned that Cassie had 5 miscarriages, and then she ended up adopting 2 boys from Ghana, and then she was able to went on to have 4 more biological children. But she was told by Dr. Hilgers, the top guy in Omaha, that basically she'll never have kids. And he did everything he could, and so God like did a miracle after she adopted. Like, miracle happened. So her story's in here, and then we have stories of different saints that have miscarriage, and it is kind of like chicken soup for the soul, where we have stories, and I think stories that people can just relate to. And so there's stories of several saints, and then we go into about 15 couples that tell miscarriage, there's stillbirth, and there's infant loss, and then we have some resources, some prayers, and what struck me recently in this book is one of the themes that came across was our Blessed Mother appeared to several women in this book. And then I didn't go and seek them because of that, but one woman saw her miscarried baby after Mass recently, and she saw Mary with her child who had grown up a little bit. And often, we just think, sadly, the church has been kind of quiet on this issue, is like, especially because some of the church fathers, they kind of mention limbo, and which hasn't been a church teaching. Obviously, we know that baptism is necessary for salvation, but it's like also like that baptism of desire. So we put that quote in there. There's a commission that Pope Benedict found that was at the forefront of, that said, that parents should have hope that that their child is in heaven. If because they have that baptism of desire, and that's in the Catechism. But again, I think this book is just, it's meant to console the heart of all those who have lost a child, because often you will feel alone in your parishes. People don't come up to you unless you tell them, and even there they say hurtful things to you. And we have a section on that. Like, so this book is available at Sophia Press, but it just, I really just want people to feel after they read this book, like, wow, the saints are with you, and we're with you, and you're not alone.
It's such a gift when people speak of it. I have a good friend, Lauren, with Santa Clara Design, and she had made a print of a quote by Zelly Martin, and it says, "We will see our little ones again up in heaven." And I have that in the hallway. I walk by it every night. It's by the kids' rooms, and I had never thought much about it until a couple years ago. My Mary Alice, she's now 9. She asked me about the quote, and she asked me, what does that mean? And so I explained to her. I said, you have brothers and sisters in heaven. And now when people, we meet, say, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" And I'll say, "Oh, I have 5." And she'll say, "Mama, no, you don't. You have 13." and and so it's this sweet, innocent, terribly awkward moment where I explain, you know, um, explain that our family does have kiddos in heaven. And I am so thankful to other people who use their voice to share about their experiences and what they've been through, because it certainly is a comfort to know that I'm not the only person that went through that.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think the siblings, like our son is 8 and our daughter is going to be 2 next month, and I feel like they're forgotten so much, and they grow up. My son is basically an only child, and I just sense this loss around him playing outside. And so we try to have play dates with friends that are his age, but it's like really siblings. They're kind of like someone's missing. And I discovered, this was about, I think, like a couple years ago, that my grandmother, she had a stillbirth, and it was I think, I'm pretty sure it was a boy, and it sort of been my uncle. But she was so, like, back in the day, I mean, this happened, I want to say it was around like 1956 or whatever, but she never like told anyone at all. Like she kept it private. And I just think all those years, it's like I got an uncle in heaven, that not, God willing, I look forward to meeting him. But like, and I think we just carry this silently. And so it's like when you get it out in the light and you realize, it's like
Mhm.
it does bring great healing to talk about it. And and obviously there's some people you don't share it with, because people ask me, how many children do you have, and sometimes it depends on who's asking, because it's like, maybe I'm not in a good mood, I don't want to, my wife's next to me and she doesn't, she's going to start crying, so I don't want to bring it up then.
Right.
So I mean, you're not like hurting your children by not saying you don't have the full amount.
Right.
Just, I think it just depends on who's asking, and maybe
Yeah.
if they, especially if they acknowledge, like, what, they had a miscarriage. And I've noticed some people when I have a miscarriage are like, oh, I've had one too. And I think
Mhm.
it depends on, again, you should be comforting that person too when they reach out to you and their vulnerability. Then you can also say, yeah, like I know what it's like as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
When you were writing this book, was there a saint that you feel like came along beside you and really helped you with writing it?
Yeah, I do feel like I was able to interview Saint Gianna Mola's daughter, and so
Wow.
and I believe that someday she'll be a saint. She's very holy, and and so just getting some information on her parents, and just the trust level that they had with God, and but I also believe her dad will be a saint too. I mean, I almost think he suffered even more than the wife, because I mean, you have to raise 4 children or so by
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
and to lose your wife, and so I think she, Saint Gianna's daughter, and then Saint Gianna Mola. When I used to be Tan Book's editor, I once reached out to Cardinal Burke, because I would email with him quite a bit, and he has a close relationship with Saint Gianna, and he goes, "I will pray for you and your wife to have another child," and so I believe that his prayers, and then I went to Mother Angelica's shrine to seek her prayers, and that's right after that my wife conceived, and we had a long story, but we had like backstory in the book, The Grief of Dads, I wrote for Ave Maria Press, is just for men of child loss. And I tell more about, like, so we had like toxic mold in our house, and that was the reason. It's the worst kind of deadliest mold. We discovered that, we didn't know it was there, but that was the cause of all the miscarriages. And so that was painful. But all through this, I do felt like the saints were like, because no one's like mentioned really very few people talk about the saints and their sufferings, like especially miscarriage. So that was important for my co-author Cassie and I to highlight that, to show
Yeah.
like, hey, they suffered this with you. So when you feel alone, maybe your relatives or people in your parish don't understand you, but the saints do.
Yep. Yeah, it's miscarriage is very interesting, because sometimes when you haven't gone through it, you don't relate to, um, what a great loss it is. And many of mine were very early along.
Yeah,
And so, they were either at the point where, one of them we didn't even know um, we were expecting when it happened. And um, it's hard to just bring up that grief almost out of nowhere, seemingly. It's hard to explain,
yeah,
but I definitely feel like the saints have sat with me through that and have been willing to just be quiet and sit with me when a lot of times that's exactly what you need. You don't need the platitudes, you don't need
yeah.
anything except someone to just sit with you and just say, "I'm sorry. That really stinks." Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. No, I think we did have, the one is, and she's going to be up for canonization, servant of God, Chiara Corbella Petrillo. We have a lot of her quotes in there. I love her book, Servant of God, Chiara Corbella Petrillo. So she was born a month before me in 1984.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny, my wife was born like 12 days before Blessed Carlo. She's like 7 years younger than me, but it's funny, we're like born by these two saints,
Oh,
future saints.
wow.
And but just shows you, like, I feel like she is, well, her cause is, I think they're in the process of getting her beatified. She lost two of her children that were born, like died within, I think it was that first day of birth. And she knew they were going to have deformities, but she kept the baby. And then her third child was healthy, and then she had developed some cancer in her mouth,
Mm.
and then she ended up dying of cancer. I think she was around 28 or 29. I forget how old when she died. But like her story, just like, I mean, just you talk about like losing your children and then you're getting cancer and dying. But I mean, just, again, when we feel like our cross is too heavy to bear, it's like,
Mhm.
like, you know, obviously Jesus is there, but he also gives us these saints to help us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just to remind us that this earth is not our home, and that just to keep looking to him, just to keep lifting our eyes up when I'm so tempted to look down and get very involved in myself and my feelings and my all the things and my thoughts, just to raise my eyes back up and lift them up to him. Um, the saints are so good at that.
Uh, it is, and I have to, I mean, like, I don't know, like, I feel like I don't know about you, but like just all these, different sufferings they weigh you down. Like they age you. I mean, they can kill you. Really, stress can kill you. The grief can kill you. And it's like, I really think it's like, that's why, and I need to focus on, it's like, just for today, Lord, just like help me get through, just in this present moment, and not worry so much about even, even in our country, what's going to happen with the election, all these things that are just like that weigh on our heart. And the saints are like, do you not realize like we are this army in heaven? And, like, if you don't give up, like we just persevere, pray every day for perseverance, like, that, and have hope. And I think the thing too is like our joy. Sometimes that's what the devil wants to take away from us, even in the midst of miscarriages. And I think about like Saint Philip Neri, and you look at Mother Angelica. No matter how hard your day is, like, just to laugh, if you can, just gotta laugh at some point, and just like, okay, and I think that's been helpful to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, if people want to find your work and order some of your books, where's the best place they can do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, Patrick, and then my middle initial R as in Ryan, Patrick R, and then my last name, O'Hearn.com without the apostrophe. So patrickrO'Hearn.com. And next year, I'm leading a pilgrimage to Italy, Slovenia, and Austria. And I'm half Slovenian. And I don't, if anyone's listening, they've ever never been over those countries, I will tell you, like, Slovenia is it's supposed to be. I've been there once, but it's probably the most beautiful country in all of Europe. It's one of the most beautiful ones, and very Catholic country. And so, if anyone wants to join me, that pilgrimage is on there, and we'll have like daily mass confession. And we'll be going to Venice for a couple days, and then so I'd love for any of your guests
Wow.
at all to join me. And I have a couple books on the horizon, so I'm really grateful for your support. It helps, part of the reason I do write. It's my kind of my second job. I'm praying to be a full-time writer, but I write so my wife can homeschool, and so your support really helps. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I really do appreciate your encouragement and all of the wisdom that you share with other writers. It's an absolute blessing.
And you too with writing. I really do. I want to encourage too, like, writers to realize, like, I didn't have the background. I don't have an English degree, a journalism degree. I'm sure there's way better writers out there, but I really think when you ask the Holy Spirit to inspire you, and there's a story each of us has. Now, whether that becomes published or not, but I think within our hearts, everyone's a writer. Whether that's, again, but I do want to encourage anyone that's listening, that, like, just you have your book published, is to really, to ask God, what is there a message, is there a certain theme or a saint that I'm supposed to share with the world, and not be afraid if you feel like you're a nobody, and like, no one's going to like this, but just ask the saints, and believe that God believes in you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Patrick. I will be putting all the information on my website on how to reach Patrick, how to find his website, and all of his books. And we just thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much, Kate.
Thank you so much for joining us for Tripping Over the Saints. I hope you enjoyed meeting our new friend, and I cannot wait to introduce you to more new friends. If you would like to become a patron of this podcast, we would love for you to join in at Patreon. The donations you make go directly to cover the hosting, technical support, and donations we make to our speakers and podcasters and missionaries that come on the show to introduce us to someone new. Have a great day, and I cannot wait to talk to you again.